One thing about support that I know, and you've mentioned team structure a lot, is that we really are here a team structure. I would feel the anxieties and the angst in the office because the consistency level of income for many originators is very up and down.
He said, if I knew what he knew, that this would make more sense. And I knew at that moment, I was like, I need to go find out what he knows. And he was like, you're really good with numbers. Why don't you become my lender? And one day I looked it up. The same day that I looked it up, I booked my course, took the course, passed it on the first try. And then that's when I found out about what this industry was all about. I didn't even know when I started.
Matt Weaver, the #1 mortgage originator in the United States for most loans closed in 2023 and #1 in the state of Florida from 2020 to present, has spent over 27 years mastering the purchase market, earning more than 16 #1 titles across his career. Max Fisch, 2024's #1 originator in the United States under 30 and #2 in the state of Florida, achieved those titles within just 5 years of entering the mortgage industry, compressing decades of growth into a few extraordinary years. Collectively, they've helped more than 40,000 families purchase their first home. Now partners and looking to improve the industry on a national scale, Matt and Max share their winning formula, team structure and systems with originators who want to scale from elite to extraordinary levels.
So Scott,
Yeah.
I just want to get this out of the way first and foremost. I didn't wear a red tie for nothing, so I hope that you came here with some value to give the audience today.
Yeah, I got some value for everybody.
Good. That's what the red tie means, value. Okay? I have my best politician look on today.
Yeah, I would say
For
the president.
I appreciate that. Maybe one day. But I'm excited about today's episode because we do have Scott Souffrant here with us today. And I think everybody's in for a big treat because you're one of our newest team members. How long have you been with us on the team?
I've been with the team about 4 months now.
Okay, so about
A nice 4 months.
90, 120 days, somewhere in there. And I just know that you can provide so much insight and value. As Matt and I talk about all of the time, our team structure and our ecosystem just warrants originators plugging in and achieving high levels of origination, high levels of accomplishment, reaching self-actualization. I mean, we've talked about all of these concepts. And I think that you, in your short time here, have embodied most of these. Right? But first and foremost, I want to kind of ask you, what is your background in origination? How did you get into this business? What did you do before that? So on and so forth. If you could just give us some insight on that.
Right, definitely. So prior to getting into origination, I had aspired to be a medical doctor, and that kind of got derailed because of like family stuff, and I wanted to be there for my family.
Sure.
So kind of like anybody else, you kind of stumble on origination. And I had a good friend of mine, he was a realtor, and he was like, you're really good with numbers. Why don't you become my lender? And one day I looked it up. The same day that I looked it up, I booked my course, took the course, passed it on the first try. And then that's when I found out about what this industry was all about. I didn't even know when I started.
And how long ago was that?
That was about 5 years ago.
Oh, so similar to me.
Yes.
It's so interesting because I've shared with a great group before that part of my reason for getting into this industry was to be able to provide a financial future for my family.
Right.
And it sounds like you did something similar.
Yep.
When you were first considering coming into this business. So that's amazing. And so when you first came in, okay, what was your role? What's been your background in this industry? What role in business function were you executing on a daily basis?
So when I first got into the industry, it was more so just kind of get thrown to the wolves, right? Everybody's saying, go get business, but no one's giving you any structure on how to get business.
Sure.
So you just start kicking the can down the road until you get your first transaction, start building some relationships. And what you find quickly is that this is actually a business and you actually need help, or you need to be in a position to focus on one role at a time. And for me, as most originators, when they start off in this business, they have to wear every single hat through the process. So, yeah.
So you were in essence a lone wolf, no pun intended.
Yeah. Lone wolf.
Okay. A lone wolf. I like it.
100%.
But when you first got into the business and you started to recognize this, were you, did you find yourself wearing many different hats?
Yeah.
And doing a million different things to just execute one transaction, let alone gain any traction for your business.
Right, 100%. So, as any other loan officer, you're going to be doing the applications, you're going to connect with all the realtor partners, you're going to make all the phone calls, you're going to do all the marketing on your own, do all the luncheons on your own. And what you find is that there's not enough time in your day to do it all. So, for me, I understood pretty quickly that that was a means to an end, right? Most originators kind of find themselves where they rise really fast, and once they hit the wall, they kind of tail off and, it kind of like bellies up a little bit.
It's a plateau.
Yeah, 100%.
And so you were pretty much caught in what we call here the origination cycle. You were doing a little bit of a bunch of different things.
Yep.
And so that's interesting because we talk about that a lot. And the sad part about it is you were one of many, of most, I should say, originators that feel that same way. And I would venture to say that you probably didn't feel as if there was a way out of that.
Right, 100%.
That was just industry standard. This is just what I need to do, and hopefully I can grow and scale over time.
Right.
And so that's an interesting concept because we talk a lot about here how people simply don't know. When I say people, I'm specifically talking about originators.
Right.
They simply don't know that there's another way, which is sad.
Yeah.
Industry wide.
Right.
So fast forward 90 to 120 days ago, you joined us on this team.
Right.
And we were talking right before we came on this show about your experience here. And I just want to highlight for everybody listening, okay, 3 main things that you spoke about. And that was focus, support, and consistency.
Right.
And so I really want to hone in on those because I feel like it will be helpful for originators listening to understand how has focus, support, and consistency been such cornerstones for you since you've been on this team. So let's start with focus.
Yeah, so definitely the focus has been extremely important for me because as you know, as the originator, was it lone wolf originator? Is that what you said earlier?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so the lone wolf originator, you can't focus on just one task every day.
Sure.
You can't just focus on getting things, completing applications every day. You're focused on getting the business every day. You're focused on dealing with processing every day. Where in this role, I get to focus specifically on the client and doing their applications, collecting their documents, and I know what my days is going to look like every single day, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's very important for you to be successful, knowing exactly what you're going to do every single day without losing your train of thought because you got a random call and you have to go to a luncheon or whatever it may be. Being able to focus every single day on doing the same task, you're going to be able to do it at a high level. Yeah, that's how I feel.
So, in other words, staying in your lane.
Yes, 100%.
And what's interesting is, and one thing I do really want to highlight is staying in your lane. We've spoken about on this show that it helps you reach self-actualization.
Right.
So you can achieve extraordinary things when you're focused on one single thing. And so in the past, give me your greatest month that you ever did transaction-wise as an originator.
Yeah, so my greatest month was probably 4. I really like 4 transactions in a month.
And I believe within 60 days of you being on our team, what did you do 15, 16 transactions in a month here?
Yeah, I did about 15 transactions. Yeah.
You did 15 transactions. So let's just think about that for a second. That's almost 4 times your best month. And I believe that was in December.
Yeah.
Or January, which in the origination world are the down months.
Right.
And so I just want everybody to think about that. And I'm first and foremost, I'm so happy for you. Okay.
Right.
Congratulations on your success. But that's so important to understand that you can, in other words, 4x, okay, your top line of the entirety of your career prior to being here.
Right.
By just staying focused in your lane.
Right.
Which is, it's just incredible. And so I think that embodies, okay, why you said focus has been such a highlight of your time here.
Right.
And then let's move on to support, because one thing about support that I know, and you've mentioned team structure a lot, is that we really are here a team structure, okay? Not a typical branch. So a typical branch has a bunch of loan originators running around and just doing their own things. There's no cohesiveness.
Right.
But here, I'm as accountable as a rainmaker to you as an advisor as you are to me.
Yep.
What activities am I doing on a daily basis to make sure that you have home buyers and referrals to work?
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
And so I think that that's so important as far as support. It's accountability. It's an ecosystem of a team structure, but I'd like to hear your insights.
Yeah, definitely the support it's one of the main things that makes this team special. So whenever you're doing a loan, you may not have the answers to every single loan, but you do have a lab where you can take that same loan and bring it to a in-house underwriter who can tell you exactly how that loan works, so that when you go back to the client, you can actually express it at a high level. You can explain things at a high level, because you don't have to know all of the details for the guidelines, but you have a underwriter that's in-house that does know those guidelines.
Absolutely. So let's just make sure that everybody is aware. So Scott is an advisor on our team.
Right.
What an advisor does internally is works with home buyers, takes applications, collects documents, and does home buyer consultations.
Right.
When Scott refers to the lab, what he's talking about is the role in lane that we have, okay, that reviews documents, structures the file, the loan, and gets it back to you to do a consultation.
Yep.
So that support, that team structure, that ecosystem really helps us serve real estate agents and their prospective buyers on a high level.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So focus, support, and then you mentioned consistency. Shed some light on that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so the consistency kind of ties into the focus, right? The consistency is knowing the mundane that you're going to do every single day. You're going to walk into the office, you're going to do applications, you're going to collect the documents, and you're going to get it into the lab, which is the lane that they review all the documents and then do the consultation. So having that consistent process every single day is going to allow you to excel in your profession. So that's what's important to me, being able to stay consistent and disciplined to my task every single day.
And also we talked about the consistency of income as well.
Right.
Because originators typically, and I know this because I ran a pretty high volume branch. Okay.
Mhm.
And I use the word branch, not team. Okay. I ran a pretty high volume branch, and I would feel the anxieties and the angst in the office because the consistency level of income for many originators is very up and down.
Right.
Where in the advisor role, in the seat that Scott is in, and executing at a high level, it's as simple as, and we talked to you about this in one of our first meetings, it's as simple as, okay, what is your target income? Okay, so we just back into the numbers. What's our average loan size? Okay, how many applications do you have to take times that average loan size to get to your income?
Right.
And it was a very simple calculation. And when it makes sense math-wise and logically, it typically makes sense practically.
Right.
Okay. So that's all we did with you. And I'm sure that you can say that it's as expected plus more.
Yes, 100%. Everything that you guys told me initially is come true, right? And you guys kept your end of the bargain. And for me, my job was to always make sure I kept my end of the bargain too, and put in the sweat equity that I needed to put in to actually reach all those numbers that we discussed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think the consistency, what it does is it helps us in our day to day. If we're not stressed about, our referrals going to come in, or where am I going to get my next loan or transaction, and we're more focused on what our tasks are and executing at a high level.
Yeah.
I think all of those things combined, focus, support, consistency, really help us reach that high level of production and self-actualization, which you're experiencing, which I think is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so I think that I want people to take away that we have two people here, okay, you more recent than me,
Right.
that were both caught in this origination cycle, and we didn't understand that there was a way out.
Right.
And understanding our team structure, okay, what piece of advice do you think that you would give an originator that feels as if they're stuck, as if there's no way out, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. What piece of advice, if any?
So one thing that I'll bring up is something that Matt shared with me. He said, if I knew what he knew, that this would make more sense. And I knew at that moment, I was like, I need to go find out what he knows. And I think if you want to get a bit of advice, find out more about Originate for Life and follow the podcast and learn about what they're talking about, because Matt and Max are doing that at a high level. And by finding out what they knew, kind of has allowed me to start getting closer to self-actualization.
Yeah. Is it out of line to say that your time here has almost changed the trajectory of your career and really changed the quality of life?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine to say that.
Yeah, I think that's a good conclusion. Here's the good news. The good news is that through F13 Consulting, right? Okay, originators really get the playbook and the curtain gets pulled back on how the team is structured, the different nuances, because I think that it's important for originators to understand, and one of the key takeaways, as I mentioned, is that there is a way out. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And whether it's a part of this team or a part of a team that you're building, okay, out there as a part of F13 Consulting, you'll really start to understand how this can be life-changing.
Right.
And so when we say originate for life, it's not just originate for the duration of your life, but it's originate for the quality of your life. Right. So there's a double meaning there. And so I'm really thankful that not only are you a part of this team, but I'm thankful for you sharing your story, because I think it's impactful. And I can't say enough how happy I am for you, and congratulations on your continued successes. And I'm just blessed to do it alongside you every single day. So thank you for being here, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.